What comes to your mind when I use the word rich? Lakhs, crores of rupees, maybe billions of dollars. But what if I tell you that there were people so rich in India that they were using diamonds bigger than Kohinoors on their chappals and as their paperweights, but still smoke the cigarette butts of their visitors? Truth, I find, is indeed sometimes stranger than fiction. And in fiction, you can weave the stories of crimes, robberies, like anything. But in today's podcast, we have with us Miss Sharmistha Shenoy, the author of the Hyderabad Heist, wherein she tells us the story of one of the greatest museum robberies, of one of the greatest gold heists ever in the history of India. So hop on to the podcast. So hello and welcome to another episode of the podcast. And today we have with us Sharmistha ma'am. Ma'am, thanks a lot for joining
Thanks
us.
for having me.
Yeah. So, while researching for this podcast, I got to know a fact that the erstwhile state of Hyderabad joined the Union of India in September of 1948. That's like a year later than we got independent. And then fast forward it to September of 2018, when one of the biggest thefts, the greatest heist that ever took place in the history of India was there in Hyderabad. And this particular year was dominated by very high profile marriages, that like that of Priyanka Chopra with Nick Jonas and all that stuff. So ma'am, between all this noise and it, how did you land up on this particular story?
Actually, I was thinking of writing a true crime story. Basically, I had so far written only fictions. So I wanted to expand my database kind of and get into true crimes. So that was the basic premise. So I went to the commissioner at that time, who was Dr. Mr. Anjani Kumar. Mr. Anjani Kumar, he said that, who is now the DGP, by the way. So he said that, Sharmistha, you can take up this particular case, which is the case of this Hyderabad Heist. So he told me that this one is closest to my heart. So I would like you to write a story based on. So that's how this entire journey started.
Wow, ma'am, that's fabulous. I mean, getting the recommendation straight
Yes.
from the horse's mouth. And when we when we talk about this particular theft, I was just trying to get more details regarding it. So the approximate value of that theft on was like 1 crore something, and due to the antique value of it, it was around
That's
40
correct.
crores. And I think it was,
That's correct.
yes, ma'am.
That is correct.
Yeah. So that was, yeah. So that was basically covered in, I think, few of the newspapers. It made to the headlines as well, but then it got lost in the news that we get every day, I
That
think.
is correct because it even made it to the Guardian in London. That the Guardian published this story, but because you see, this was solved very easily. So that's why probably it did not. And this is like publicity is something. I don't think the Hyderabad police they go after such publicity. You have to be in the limelight. You have to do many things. But the Hyderabad police is basically they're focused on their work. They are not really focused on getting unnecessary publicity. If it was probably a filter, they would have made the story for all it was worth. But here there was nobody who was interested in making this story. So probably because of that, it got lost here in the process, which is in a way fortunate for me because I brought it back to the limelight.
Indeed, ma'am. Actually, it is. I mean, and I think the way you have done justice to the story, especially, I keep reading about history and I love to get to know more about how we are the way we are. And I knew a few things here and there regarding the Nizams of Hyderabad, but after reading your book, my interest just peaked. And then I just got to know about the riches of how much rich, I mean, this particular dynasty was. Like in 1937, when India, I can say, was not in a very good shape, both politically and economically. And in that time, by Time magazine, he was pronounced to be maybe the richest person on the surface of Earth. So his, I mean, what is your view regarding
The
it?
thing is that he was the richest person on the earth at that time, richer than Elon Musk, richer than Bill Gates. But but the problem is that you have to see that how this wealth was actually when it came to the next generation, it was just lost. It was unfortunately totally lost. That was because of many factors. One factor was that the Nizam, he was supposed to be a very very conducive kind of person, a very very spendthrift and miserly kind of person, and he used to wear torn clothes. I mean, you can think of the aristocrats of the British era.
Yeah.
Those kind of people, they the aristocrats, they will go around in torn clothes or scruffy clothes, and it is expected that they will. But even in our country, the last Nizam of Hyderabad, he used to behave like that. He had the biggest diamond in the world, which he used to hide in a shoe. Okay, another, because he simply didn't like the diamond. Another diamond was there, he used to use as a paperweight. So this was the kind of riches that he had. But what had happened is he didn't want to join the India when the India gained independence. He didn't want to be part of India, I think. Right. So what happened was that he was resisting the merging of his empire into the Indian continent. So subcontinent. So what happened was that with the Indian government basically. So he had his own army and he was prepared to fight the Indian government. So he was a very eccentric character. Basically, he didn't realize that it is impossible to fight the Indian government. There's no way he could have done it. So so what happened is that he realized that after some time, maybe some advisors helped him. So what he did is he transferred most of his fortune into a Bank of England, and there his most of his major part of his fortune lay in the Bank of England. Then what happened is the new Nizam was after he died, the new Nizam was brought into the picture. Now he had many kids and grandkids, but he selected one of his grandkids. I have forgotten the name of that person, whatever. But he was actually Princess Darusheva's son. Princess Darusheva's son.
Yeah.
So Mir Osman Ali Khan, I think. So what happened was that this guy was least interested in his empire, in maintaining this empire. I have a similar story in the King Edward, who married Simpson. In the British history, there was one Edward. He gave up his throne basically because he wanted to marry Simpson.
Yes.
A commoner. At that time,
Yeah.
if you marry a commoner, you have to give up your throne. A king cannot marry a commoner.
You have to abdicate your rights. Yeah.
He just threw away his throne. So like this person, the descendant, he was absolutely not interested in his new kingdom. He even said that when he was being crowned the new Nizam, what he was thinking is he was very interested in cars, by the way. So what he was seeing is, okay, why this car is not starting? That was his thought process at that time when he was being crowned the new Nizam of Hyderabad. So after he got his crown, what he did is simply he was at that time staying in the outback of Australia, and he was repairing tractors and all that thing. So he used his wealth, whatever he got, in trying to build up this tractor stuff. When he had a kind of workshop where he used to repair old tractors and all that. He was very much into this kind of stuff, motors, tractors, and all that, engineering. So basically, he used all his money in trying to maintain this workshop and in trying to provide for I think about 500 or 1,000 people were there in his outback, and he was paying for those people. And he ended up losing because it was not a profitable business, and he ended up losing the Nizam's wealth was gone in a matter of 30-40 years. So once it was all gone, he saw that he cannot continue with his factory. So what did he do? He was a very embittered man, and he came back. He came back to Turkey at that time because his mother was from Turkey, I believe. So he came back to Turkey. He bought a two-bedroom apartment in Turkey, and he spent the rest of his life in that apartment. So even the richest man's wealth can be squandered in a lifetime if you don't know how to handle the wealth.
in one generation, ma'am. I think I think we are talking about the eighth Nizam, Karam Jahan, if I'm not wrong. That, that's his name. And I actually read this fabulous story that you told me, that how he spent majority of his time in the Australian outback, as they say over there, with his tractors and cars, and I think he has just died in January 2023. I think this year.
He was brought back to Hyderabad, and he is buried here. And he never had any interest in Hyderabad. That's the whole point.
Yeah, actually, I think there was even a phrase that he used, that I don't want to go into that stuff. But one more thing, ma'am, as you have mentioned very rightly and very beautifully, that the wealth of even a Nizam can be spent in a generation. I would like to tell our listeners here that the Nizam at that time was valued at around $236 billion. $236 billion. That was a huge amount. And there was this particular diamond that you were mentioning about, that was used as a paperweight, which goes by the name of Jacob's diamond, and which is now lying in a vault with RBI at Mumbai now. Would you like to say something more?
I don't have any idea about what has happened anymore, because I went to the Nizam's museum, and there I got the story that he used to use one of those diamonds as a paperweight, and it was displayed in the museum for some time. But after the theft, I think it has been moved to the vault.
So now, after reading your book, I just really got excited about a lot of things, and one of those things was this Jacob's diamond. So I got to know that this diamond was very unfortunate for everyone that any time possessed it. So there was this Mr. Jacob who bought it from Amsterdam, tried to sold it to the father of Mir Osman Ali, and then he also considered it very unfortunate. Therefore, he used to wear that diamond on his slippers. That was a fact. I got that from a book itself, that his father used to wear those slippers with a diamond, which now lies in a vault with RBI. So one more particular thing that you mentioned about the Nizam is that in the book is that through the character, is that he used to maybe smoke the cheapest cigarettes and the butts of the cigarettes of the visitors.
Very, 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 very miserly character. He used to exactly. He used to keep those butts, and then he used to re-smoke those, recycle. She brought in the concept of recycling, I think. Yeah, no, these people, they are very
indeed, it was
characters. It's kind of...
Yeah. Actually, I mean, to use a diamond as a paperweight, to use a diamond on his slippers, to re-smoke, I don't know whether to use a used cigarette butt, and you don't expect it from someone who can be considered as one of the richest person ever, maybe in the world.
Born into such things, you won't really understand the value. If you're born in a common family, then if you're moving into royalty, you will understand the value. You will kind of treat it as precious. But if you're already born and brought up in such environment, you don't understand it. And this is not the first time. See, even the King Edward was there. He gave up his throne. He said, okay, it doesn't really matter. And then, but if we look at the current scenario, for example, this William and Kate, Catherine. Catherine comes from a common family. She really understands the value of being a queen. She'll fight tooth and nail to be a queen, you know. But if you look at William, I know, or Charles, I don't know. Maybe Charles understands the value of being a king now because he spent so much time in line waiting for his mother to die. So, but unless when you have everything in a platter, basically, don't you understand the value? Do you have a kahavat? No, in Hindi, I think if you have a tooth, you don't understand the value of the tooth. It's only when it's taken away from you that you really understand the value. The same thing, I think. It is human psychology.
Definitely, ma'am. This is very right, actually, and even particularly when we talk about administrators and when we talk about kings, when we talk about dynasties, people have conquered great pieces of land, countries, subcontinents, but it only takes nearly a generation of a poor administratorship to ruin it all when one dynasty just overtakes other. It just takes one dynasty, maybe 5 years, 10 years. The throne is not forgiving at all. Is not forgiving at all. So, ma'am, moving on to this particular heist. I mean, this was a job of two very common thieves, as I read from your book. So they just, they just made their way through it. And one particular aspect which really struck me was, I think it was one of the thieves who was just visiting the museum, and then he overhears the administrator telling someone that the CCTV doesn't work. So how important, according to you, was the human angle on this?
Of course, it was very, very important. See, the thing is that people in the museum, even now, if you look at it, the museum is still adjacent to the another house. It's people can still jump from one house to the museum. But the only thing is remove the iron staircase with the help of which you could have gone inside the museum. But the point is that security is very lax. But maybe they trust the people in the old city of Hyderabad. That's why they are so lax. It could be. See, the thing is that there's always it's a community and they're proud of the Nizam and his legacy. So maybe they will not do anything. But the point is that the absolutely, and what I mean is that the point is that when you have the diamonds and so many expensive artifacts around, you should be more have more security around. So what has happened is maybe people got complacent because nobody had stolen anything so far, and security was not working okay. One day it will work. So that was the kind of attitude. I mean, yeah, okay, chalega, ho jayega, one day it will work. And nobody will probably take this. It's why to worry? But what happened for them, unfortunately, this guy who was supposed to visit the hospital at that time, he got, and he was waiting for the queue. And he said, okay, let me go on. Because you don't expect a thief kind of person who has no historical background, who doesn't know, no education, who doesn't know the history. Why should he go into a museum? People generally tend to avoid museums, So basically, who will go into a museum? But unfortunately, he was at the right place at the right time. Or maybe the wrong time, because ultimately he was captured. But he was at the right place at that time, and he overheard that the security camera is not working. Oh, very good. And and that thief is his name has been changed, but he is smarter than the other one. Even though the other one had taken the lead in this escapade, this other person was actually the smarter of the two. And he has now become a very big criminal because both of them went to jail, and for criminals, going to jail is like a graduation. So they have become bigger thieves now, and this guy is doing really well. If you look at common men, two students doing engineering, and one is doing really well and the other is not doing so well, even though the other one was a brilliant student, similar kind of stuff, This guy, both were thieves. Actually, the other one was not even a thief. He was in fact very hesitant.
Yeah.
Very hesitant. Only this guy told him, "Chalo, let's do it." That's why he did it. And because he was sick and he was not getting jobs, out of desperation, he did it. Once he did it, he became so smart. Now he's a even bigger criminal than the other one.
Oh, that was something that I couldn't find out. That I mean, this whole theft. I mean, logistically, if you talk about it, the way you have described the old museum as the Nizam's palace and the vicinity around it, that how that buildings are very adjacent to the museum, very close to it. I was trying to visualize it, that there's even a staircase maybe that goes through it. So they just snuck it through that iron ladder and just made their way through. And there's one particular thing I'm not right now. For the last few years, I don't read fiction that much, ma'am, to be honest. I do read here and there the books I read, but I don't read fiction much. But the one particular thing that really got my attention was this arrow mark that was left by the thieves, which ultimately helped in profiling the thieves, that maybe they were masons or something. So
Yeah, that was Antiti Kumar's, idea, because he saw that arrow mark and then he immediately struck his mind that somebody making an arrow like this can only be a mason. It's because it was a very professional. I even put the pictures in the book. It was a very professional looking, because it's concrete. To make an arrow like that in concrete, it's very difficult for a common person. So, yeah, that was a very good catch by the then commissioner. Yes.
I mean that eagle's eye was there. I mean, to as a reader to read that, to just be able to profile a person's occupation by by simple sign like that, that was really profound for me, particularly. There was one particular phrase that you use, and there is that the big thing about these thefts or heists, particularly regarding artworks, is that it's not about stealing them, it's about selling them. So that's how also they get caught. So how do you ma'am
That's
this
very
whole?
common, because in heist, if you see, museums, even you and me, I can probably, if I'm very familiar with picking locks and all that, I can, even in the Nizams Museum when I went right now, the curator just left me wandering around in that museum. Many times these museums have very few visitors. The guards are outside, I'm inside, and if I come to know, okay, this is a camera, and if I come to know that camera is not working, I can probably pick the lock and get it. But the point is, you get the thing. That's fine. You get, because if you look at the artifacts in a museum, most of the time Picasso is or say a Mona Lisa. If somebody else in the street draws that Mona Lisa, what is the value of that? None. But because it has been done by Vinci, and because it is a Mona Lisa, the original Da Vinci, that's why the value is there, right? So many times the actually the museum content is valuable only to the in the eyes of certain collectors. If for example, a Rasta fellow me who hasn't any appreciation for work or for art, if you show him that basic Mona Lisa, he'll say, "Oh, what is this? This is a very common picture of a common person," right? But a person who's a connoisseur, he will definitely know that, oh, it's a Vinci. Oh my God, it's a original Vinci. Oh yes, this is very valuable to me, right? So you have to find the right person who will buy the thing that you have stolen, right? So this, for example, this artifacts that were stolen from the Nizams Museum, these were diamonds and gold and emerald. But if you go to a very rich person, Ambani's house, for example, you will also get that diamond and gold and emerald. But does it have the same valuation? No, it doesn't, because this was the Nizams. This was the Nizams. This is 200 years old. So, or sorry, not 200, but at least 100 years old. So the point is that when you are looking at the artifact, the historic value, that historic value is important only to a few handful of people. For others, for the thieves, for example, what they did, after they removed the artifacts, they pried open the diamonds, and they were trying to sell the gold separately and the diamonds separately because they had no idea what is the actual. They're masons. They don't have any idea who the Nizam is. They have not gone to school. They have no idea what a Nizam is, or maybe they know what is a Nizam, but they don't have any idea about the historical value. They are like day in, day out. I bring some money, get some money, I drink, I go and I eat and I drink, and that's it. They don't understand the historic value of such products. So when this guy went into the museum, he just saw, okay, this is a very lot of gold with lots of diamonds. What is the actual value? He had no appreciation for that also. So what if, say, a person like me, if I'm going to do the theory, what I'll say, okay, this is a very historic value, but let me first find somebody who will buy this, because what the person who buys it has to keep it hidden also. It has to be hidden because it's a stolen artifact. At least for another 20, 30, 40 years, it has to be kept hidden, and then only he can get it out and say, okay, this was the Nizam's stuff. And that too, he can show it up to a handful of other connoisseurs like him. That's it. He can never tell to the public that, okay, I have a stolen Nizam's this thing. But then these kind of people, they get pleasure in just holding that, they get pleasure. Okay, I have the Nizam's artifacts with me. But that kind of person are like one in a million. You have to find that person. Maybe somebody sitting in Paris, or oligarch sitting in Russia, or some oligarch sitting in US. They will be appreciative of such things. So first find that oligarch, then you go and you do that step. Then it makes any sense. And after you take the artifact, just take it out of the country as soon as possible. That's how a person who understands the value of these things will do, right? But these are petty thieves. They don't understand. Like even the Mona Lisa case, if you think about it, the Mona Lisa, the carpenter, he knew, he understood that it's very valuable. But like these people also, he didn't think like, who will buy from me? He didn't find the customer first. Then that's why he was very easy to catch, because he went and he wanted to some hotel owner, and he tried to say, buy this, this is from the Louvre, and that person had already heard of the theft, so he immediately informed the police because he was not interested in buying it. So that's where the thieves go wrong, if you think about it.
Just for our listeners' reference, ma'am has touched upon very important points. Even the great, one of the most sought after or talked about artwork in the history of world, the Mona Lisa, was also stolen, and that was a work of a carpenter who happened to frequent the museum. And ma'am, this is a very important point that you just touched upon. There are 2 points. First, the people who stole this stuff actually didn't know the historic value, the legacy, the antiquity value of it in the art world. Maybe because I was reading it somewhere and I found out that maybe they were having lunch in the Nizam's gold tiffin box. That was like a 1 kg gold tiffin box, and they were having lunch out of it. There were those silver spoons. I was watching that pic with Anjani sir holding that tiffin, and I couldn't visualize myself ever just touch it, leave alone have lunch in that tiffin box. So that that was something that really stuck my mind.
Understand the historic value. These people, they don't understand. They just said, okay, the Nizam you probably used to eat in this, so I want to feel like a Nizam, so I'll eat in this. That's as far as they will go.
Even this point that you said, that selling these stolen artworks would be the most difficult part of the whole artwork theft process, because even the theft in the Gardner Museum that you have rightly mentioned in your book, and then I tried to get more out of it, and I found out that those stolen artworks were never retrieved since 1990, and they have these empty frames lying in the museum, just like a trophy for the thieves. And maybe the FBI has assumed that the people who stole those particular paintings have died. FBI had a separate unit of crime investigation regarding artwork even. So that tells a lot about that how proficient and how professional the Hyderabad police were in solving this crime. I mean, I think it was solved in nearly a week,
Around 2 weeks time, yeah.
in around 2 weeks, right? So compare that to 25 years that crime gets never solved, and people never, maybe we will never know where those artworks are now, and then this particular thing that got solved
Yeah,
so
because in
fast.
this case, the thieves, in the Eva Gardner case, the thieves, they knew so they knew their customer. That is why it was so successful. It's probably lying in some rich person's Swiss vault somewhere, these artifacts. And people will never get their hands on them.
Yeah.
Maybe it has gone, it's that person has, become less rich or something. His next generation probably has sold it to another collector in the same way. So there is no way you can ever get your hands, because those artifacts actually are in the hands of people who understand it. But these people didn't have that understanding of the value.
Yes. Yeah. And while researching for this book particularly, you have obviously spoken with the team who investigated this whole theft, this heist. And what was the most striking feature that you found out about this investigation that is there on your mind? How was your experience in practice?
See, the most striking feature is that the police were absolutely motivated. They were like, okay, this is the theft of our heritage. We have to get it back at any cost, at any cost. Now, they were working 24/7. They had gone through so many footages, so many. See, the thing is that they had collected CCTV footages. They had retraced the route of the thieves, right? So they had collected CCTV footages like about 20 kilometers or so from the old city to the new city, and that can tell you that how many hours of footages they had collected, and they have gone through and they have retraced that. Okay, so that's one thing. The second thing is like the thief was carrying a mobile, so they had to go and see how many mobiles were getting hit at that particular hour in the various towers around that region. So that will be like pages and pages and list pages of phone numbers, and you have to go. So it is a lot of footwork, lot of what do you say? I mean, you don't need to think. You just have to go and do it. Physical work, And they were doing it 24/7 because they knew that if the artifacts go out of the country, they'll never be able to recover. So, and then go out to various hotels to see if the thieves have come from out of town. And, there's so many hotels around that region. So it was a lot of footwork, lot of physical activity, mindless work, routine work, but they were doing it without any complaints, because otherwise within 14 days, you cannot go through so many records, go through so much footage, go through so many hotels and, small hotels and all those things. So, and then you have to go to the airport to look whether it's somebody of that. You have to go through the CC footages of that airports. Then you have to go and look at the trains. So much work, and they were doing it uncomplainingly. And it was the commissioner had given the task of getting the recovering the theft to the elite force, to the elite force of Hyderabad. So they were like working 24/7. The best of the police team were working on this 24/7, and they did recover finally the artifact. And of course, in their case, the luck also was favored them, because they found the person when these thieves they could have found a seller in Bombay. They did not find. So they came back, and then they were trying to find a seller in Hyderabad, and then they got the information through the informant. So definitely, luck was also a big factor. But the police, they worked day and night to find it, and because Anjani Kumar himself was reviewing every single day. That's one thing. He was himself holding meetings with all the people of the team, And then other thing is that he impressed upon this upon the team the importance of retrieving these artifacts. This is the heritage of Hyderabad. This is the heritage of India.
Yes, ma'am. I mean, it was just not a theft. It was like a affront on the legacy of Hyderabad, on the legacy of
Everybody was
regarding whatever happened.
very outraged. They were outraged.
Yeah, yeah. It would have been a very difficult time for them. But anyways, we were lucky enough that those things they got retrieved. And there was this very common, I don't know whether it holds any significance or not. It just came to me. I was researching about all these art thefts, and every time these thefts used to take place, they used to take place in these wee hours of 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. Something or not. There's this common thread. Even if you look about that Gardner Museum theft, I was trying to research more about it. That is there something common? And this too, obviously, there was between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. and how they snug in into. So I'm reading those details up to the viewers to find out in the book and see for themselves. But this is something that the most of the thefts have common in them. And regarding, the modus operandi, it was so simple. I mean, what makes this thing more interesting in a sense is that it was so simple. I mean, these were just few right now we have the advantage of hindsight to see that, but while someone would have been investigating this case, how difficult it would be for them to assume that two people who just happened to be in a museum stole artifacts of worth 40 crores. That would have been really difficult to assume.
Because the police initially they thought that it is the work of the museum employees.
Inside yeah. And in your book as well, you mentioned that there was this YouTuber who was there in the museum. Was that a fictitious character or that really happened?
Fictitious.
That was a fictitious character. I just got to read about it and I was like, whether this thing is real and if it.
I wanted to, because I needed a gradual building up of the story. So that's why this did that. But the prologue part was definitely absolutely true to the scene. And if I put those little bits of YouTuber stuff, and it makes that story more interesting, yet doesn't take away anything from the story, from the truth of the story.
I was just recorded.
It is actually who had detected that theft. So I just meant that person.
Okay. So yeah. So actually, it was a visitor who realized that such a theft of this great magnitude has happened. Yeah. I really get your point, ma'am, because last time I interviewed Mr. Saurav Mukherjee, who has also written a true crime book, The Highway Murders, and he also told me that how difficult it is to write things regarding true crime and all that, and even to how to put it in a way that it becomes interesting and not just mere facts. So that would have been there.
So for fiction, for example, I write murder mysteries, for example. Now, for murder mysteries, there are various twists and turns, and then the suspense of who is the actual murderer. If you look at any Agatha Christie story or any Sherlock Holmes story, anything. But in the case of real life, there are two challenges that an author generally faces. One is it's generally extremely straightforward, very simple. There are hardly any twists and turns. So, and the second thing is how to build up the suspense in such a situation. For example, the Hyderabad Heist, you already know who is the thief. We already know that there was a theft. We already know that the thieves are caught. We know everything. Then in that case, where is the suspense? Because it's I want to build up some suspense as a suspense thriller writer. I want to build up. So in this case, the only suspense you can build up is how the theft was caught, then how the police pursued. So the person reading, police did this. Okay, this then the cell dart hit when none of the phones were actually of the thieves. Then what happened? So you have to build up the suspense in that manner. That's the only way you can do it. So that's the reason. And then the other suspense is what happened to the new Nizam's riches. So that these are the only two ways you can build up the suspense in this case.